Prologue. Elijah James, age 28, spends New Year's Eve at his childhood home in New York with his father and 5 brothers, mourning their mother's death 2 months earlier. Fireworks trigger memories of happier family traditions and emphasize how empty the house feels without her. The brothers sit together in silence as their father pours scotch, including underage Maddox, highlighting how grief has disrupted normal boundaries. They reminisce about their mother's quirks, especially her insistence on timing midnight with an old Navy diving watch that Maddox now carries. Mason suggests leaving the house to escape the pain, but their father, Dalton James, firmly refuses and asserts control. Elijah reflects on his strained marriage to Amber, but chooses to stay with his family. Dalton finally offers grim advice born of loss, telling his sons never to fall in love, underscoring the depth of his grief and setting the emotional foundation for the story. In Chapter 1, Amber James prepares for a wedding while revealing the emotional distance in her marriage to Elijah James. She maintains a flawless public image while privately clinging to reminders of their early relationship, including Elijah's old t-shirt, which she hides as a secret. Alone in their large Manhattan townhouse, Amber reflects on her loneliness, her role as a charity figurehead, and the unresolved tension in their marriage. Elijah texts that he is on his way, and Amber deliberately delays, dreading another day of pretending to be the perfect wife. When Elijah arrives, their interaction is strained but charged with lingering attraction. During the car ride, Elijah talks about his family and shows Amber photos, including Nathan James's son, Luke, which intensifies her feelings of isolation. Elijah suggests socializing together with his family, but Amber shuts the idea down with a lie, reinforcing the emotional divide between them and confirming that their marriage is built on avoidance rather than honesty. In Chapter 2, Elijah attends the wedding with Amber and realizes he has pushed too far by bringing up his family, causing her to retreat into emotional coldness. Amber refuses to speak to him, maintaining a flawless public facade while privately shutting him out. Elijah remains intensely attracted to her despite their separation and his move into a separate bedroom, which Amber explicitly reminds him of. Their interaction becomes a quiet power struggle, with restrained hostility masked by polite smiles. Elijah reflects that his brothers want him to leave the marriage, but he cannot because he still loves Amber. During the ceremony, they perform the role of a devoted couple while exchanging cutting whispers that reveal mutual resentment and unresolved desire. Amber accuses Elijah of wanting other women, which angers him as he has never cheated. The chapter establishes their toxic dynamic: deep love, lingering physical attraction, emotional warfare, and a marriage sustained by appearances rather than intimacy. In Chapter 3, Amber observes Elijah during the wedding reception and reflects on their ongoing emotional stalemate. Although they sit together, they remain distant. Their marriage effectively ended when Elijah moved into a separate bedroom 6 months earlier. Amber maintains her polished public role while internally struggling with jealousy, loneliness, and lingering desire. She notices Elijah is distracted and messaging on his phone, briefly fearing he might be talking to another woman, before learning he is communicating with his brother Mason. Their conversation turns sharp and teasing, revealing continued resentment and unresolved attraction. Despite their tension, they unite briefly to warmly greet the bride, Elodie, whom they have known for years. Elodie praises their long marriage and asks for their secret, prompting them to give a rehearsed answer about give and take. Amber privately acknowledges the painful truth that while they once shared genuine love and intimacy, their strongest remaining bond is their shared ability to convincingly pretend everything is fine. In Chapter 4, Amber attends the wedding reception and watches Elijah become absorbed in a work discussion with his assistant Louisa and Harper Perkins, reinforcing how work dominates his life. From the bar, Amber reflects on her own upbringing with an emotionally absent father and recognizes the pattern repeating in her marriage. She remembers a time when Elijah balanced ambition with warmth and prioritized her, but after years of responsibility, his mother's death, and devotion to both work and his blood family, she has been edged out of his life. Their marriage now feels like a social contract rather than a partnership. Overwhelmed by regret and emotional pain, Amber considers leaving early and begins planning an excuse. A brief interaction with her friend Martha offers temporary relief, but Amber's resolve hardens when she sees Elijah tenderly playing with a young child, highlighting his longing for fatherhood. Realizing she cannot endure the evening, Amber decides to leave the reception. In Chapter 5, Elijah realizes Amber has left the wedding reception and learns from Martha Kemp that she claimed a migraine and went home. Frustrated but concerned, Elijah decides to follow her despite knowing she wants distance. He leaves the hotel in the rain and spots Amber walking quickly down the street, clearly trying to avoid him. He catches up as she attempts to hail a cab, and a brief confrontation with the driver ensues before Amber diffuses the situation and agrees to walk home with Elijah. Once alone under a street lamp, Elijah discovers Amber is crying, something she never allows him to see. She accuses him of flirting with Shannon, but Elijah realizes her distress is actually triggered by seeing him with a child, reminding her of what she cannot give him. He responds calmly and tries to comfort her, suggesting they cool down together. Exhausted and emotionally raw, Amber finally admits she is done and tells Elijah she wants a divorce. In Chapter 6, Elijah and Amber return home and sit apart in the living room to discuss ending their marriage. Amber confirms she wants a divorce rather than a trial separation. She accuses Elijah of emotionally withdrawing through overwork, moving into a separate bedroom, and prioritizing his family. While Elijah admits these choices hurt her, but explains they came from pain and avoidance, not indifference. Their argument turns to the deeper issue of children. Amber reveals her belief that she has failed Elijah and his family because she cannot have children, a grief intensified by her parents' cruel response when she confided in them. Elijah insists he never saw her as a failure and still wants to save the marriage, even offering to abandon work and family. Amber rejects this, saying it would only breed resentment. She explains they have been unhappy for years and are hurting each other daily. Despite mutual love, Amber maintains that divorce is the only way forward, leaving Elijah devastated and conflicted. In Chapter 7, Amber leaves Elijah after asking for a divorce, believing space is necessary to prevent further damage. She wakes from an explicit dream of reconciliation only to remember the reality of their decision and breaks down, grieving the future they will never have. Amber resolves not to continue pretending and accepts that ending the marriage is the only way to stop their mutual harm. She reflects on her loneliness, envy of simpler family lives, and fear of public fallout once the divorce becomes known. Searching the house, she finds Elijah passed out in his bedroom after heavy drinking, clearly devastated by her decision. Seeing his pain nearly breaks her resolve, but she recognizes their problems are permanent and staying would only prolong suffering. Choosing distance, Amber quietly packs and leaves for the airport. She plans to go to South Carolina to stay with her grandmother Lucille, seeking comfort and guidance while giving them both space. In Chapter 8, Elijah wakes hungover and devastated, reliving Amber leaving the wedding, crying in the rain, and asking for a divorce. He reflects on how his marriage deteriorated into avoidance and conflict, contrasting it with the loving relationships of his brothers. A message from Amber confirms she has flown to Charleston to stay with her grandmother Lucille, signaling she is serious about the separation and unwilling to pretend everything is normal. Elijah realizes he stopped fighting for the marriage and relied on work and family to cope. Though he understands space may be necessary, he struggles to accept a future without Amber. He acknowledges that the vulnerable side she showed him does not change the years of unhappiness or fix their problems alone. Overwhelmed and physically ill, Elijah decides he cannot wallow. He calls an emergency meeting with his brothers and prepares to leave the house to face what comes next. In Chapter 9, Elijah gathers his brothers at the Brassington after Amber asks for a divorce and leaves for Charleston. He tells them the marriage is likely ending and admits he is devastated. Nathan reacts angrily against Amber, while Drake shows concern for both Elijah and Amber. Tension rises until Maddox intervenes, insisting the brothers focus on supporting Elijah rather than assigning blame. Elijah confirms Amber believes leaving will free him and that she is serious about the separation. The brothers acknowledge Elijah's long unhappiness but recognize his heartbreak. Mason, calling from London, urges Elijah to give it time and reassures him the pain will ease. Elijah reveals there was no prenup, shocking Nathan, but explains he believed in the marriage. The chapter ends with Elijah leaning on his brothers for support, drinking heavily, and accepting that for now his only task is to survive the day. In Chapter 10, Amber spends several days in Charleston with her grandmother Lucille, gradually finding relief away from New York. During a walk at Waterfront Park, Lucille confronts Amber about her self-pity and pushes her to reflect honestly on her marriage. Amber admits she still loves Elijah but cannot stand how she feels when she is with him. She reveals the core wound behind her withdrawal. After learning she could not have children, Elijah's mother once told her she was broken, a comment Amber never shared with Elijah and which fueled years of guilt, insecurity, and emotional distance from him and his family. Lucille challenges Amber to stop defining herself by her marriage and urges her to plan a new life. She encourages Amber to make practical lists for the future and proves it is never too late to change by revealing her own late-life happiness. Amber begins to feel hopeful, recognizing that her life is not over and that rebuilding is possible. In Chapter 11, Amber returns to New York after 2 weeks in Charleston and immediately feels overwhelmed by the city and the house she once shared with Elijah. She and Elijah have been communicating politely and have agreed to keep the divorce civil, using Drake as the only lawyer. Amber acknowledges that being Mrs. Elijah James replaced any independent career she might have built, and she knows she now needs a fresh start. Elijah has moved into a hotel, and Amber hates the house, associating it with conflict and the end of their marriage. She meets Martha for drinks, avoids revealing the separation, and reflects on how hollow her social circle feels. While at the bar, Amber unexpectedly sees Elijah with Ashley, Melanie's much younger sister. Interpreting their interaction as romantic, Amber becomes devastated and furious. Overcome by jealousy and pain, she follows Elijah as he leaves, confronting the reality of losing him and acting on impulse as she pursues him into his hotel. In Chapter 12, Elijah finishes dinner with Ashley, Melanie's younger sister, whom he is mentoring professionally. He sends her home in the Bentley, recognizing her flirtation, but reaffirming to himself that nothing romantic is happening, and that he has no interest in anyone while still married. Alone, Elijah reflects on missing Amber and feeling uncertain about both divorce and reconciliation, while legal proceedings quietly move forward. Back at his hotel, he plans to focus on work and avoid emotional decisions. In the elevator to his penthouse, Amber unexpectedly confronts him after misinterpreting his outing with Ashley as a romantic relationship. Angry and jealous, she accuses him of betrayal. Elijah explains Ashley's role and challenges Amber on why she cares after asking for a divorce. Their confrontation quickly becomes charged, revealing unresolved desire and emotional intensity. They impulsively agree to treat the encounter as anonymous and commitment-free, deciding to go to Elijah's hotel room together. In Chapter 13, Elijah brings Amber to his hotel suite, framing their encounter as anonymous and detached from their marriage. They roleplay as strangers, which allows Amber to act freer and more uninhibited than she has in years. The emotional tension between them turns physical, and they have intense sex, revealing that their desire and connection remain powerful despite the impending divorce. The encounter exposes how deeply attracted they still are and how much intimacy has been missing from their marriage. Afterward, Amber regains control and insists it cannot happen again, making it clear she does not want an affair or to blur boundaries further. Elijah outwardly accepts this, though he internally knows he does not believe it is truly over. Amber leaves the hotel room, reinforcing the separation they are trying to maintain. The chapter ends with Elijah certain that, despite their words, this will not be the last time they cross this line. In Chapter 14, Amber reflects on her intense sexual encounter with Elijah and recognizes that their physical connection remains powerful despite their decision to divorce. She recalls how fertility struggles and Verona's illness damaged their intimacy and contributed to the collapse of their marriage. Unlike past angry or transactional sex, this encounter felt deeply satisfying and emotionally tender, leaving her uncertain about whether ending the marriage is truly right. While trying to regain control, Amber receives a message from Elijah stating he left something for her and confirming there is nothing between him and Ashley. At her door, she finds a burner phone from Elijah, inviting her to continue seeing him secretly and framing it as an affair between strangers. Though she knows agreeing is risky and irrational, the secrecy and desire appeal to her. Torn between logic and longing, Amber ultimately accepts, replying that it will be their secret, signaling she is willing to continue this hidden relationship. In Chapter 15, Amber and Elijah finalize and approve a public statement announcing their amicable separation, making the end of their marriage officially public. Despite lingering desire and secret sexual communication between them, neither pauses the divorce process, leaving Amber deeply saddened and conflicted. Drake offers the option to delay the announcement, but Elijah does not take it, reinforcing that the separation is moving forward. Amber informs her parents, who respond with financial concerns rather than emotional support, underscoring her isolation. With her social calendar cleared and Elijah away for work, Amber struggles with purposelessness and recognizes she needs a job and an identity outside being Elijah's wife. She unsuccessfully experiments with hobbies before deciding to pursue meaningful, hands-on volunteer work. A conversation with her cleaner, Vicky, leads to a possible opportunity at a community center in Queens, working directly with people and children. Feeling cautiously hopeful, Amber considers stepping outside her privileged world just as Elijah contacts her through the burner phone, suggesting they meet again. In Chapter 16, Amber meets Elijah in Greenwich Village to maintain secrecy around their affair. Elijah arranges discreet transportation and a private upscale hotel designed for anonymity, reinforcing their agreement to pretend to be strangers. They adopt the aliases Mr. and Mrs. Smith and acknowledge the sadness surrounding their public separation, while choosing to continue their relationship in secret. They spend the evening together in a private room, where their physical connection deepens and the role play intensifies their intimacy. Afterward, they share an unusually honest conversation about Amber's desire to change her life, find purpose, volunteer, and eventually work. Amber explains how infertility and ungrieved loss left her feeling hollow and disconnected. Elijah listens, expresses regret that neither processed those losses, and insists he will always protect her even after divorce. Their discussion reveals unresolved emotional attachment and conflicting needs. Despite recognizing the situation is complicated and potentially unhealthy, both admit they do not want the affair to end and agree to continue discreetly. In Chapter 17, Elijah struggles to focus at work as the fallout from his separation and secret affair with Amber consumes his thoughts. A meeting with Mason is called to manage the intense media attention following their public separation statement. Amber arrives tense and guarded, clashing with Mason over his proposal that they give a joint interview at the marital home to calm press interest. Amber refuses, revealing she plans to move out because the house holds too many painful memories. Elijah is blindsided by this decision and reacts defensively, leading to a sharp argument that briefly resurrects the cold dynamics of their marriage. Amber storms out, and Elijah follows her, stopping her outside to talk privately. They apologize for slipping into old patterns and acknowledge the pressure they are under. Amber confirms she is leaving the house, but reassures Elijah she will stay safe. They part on fragile but calmer terms, both shaken by how easily past wounds resurface and by what still remains unresolved between them. In Chapter 18, Amber cautiously visits Drake at the James & James offices after the James Tech meeting fallout. She signs divorce paperwork, confirming she is still committed to ending the marriage despite lingering emotions. Drake advises her to seek independent legal counsel due to his conflict of interest, but Amber refuses, stating she trusts both Drake and Elijah and wants an amicable divorce. She makes clear she has no interest in James Tech and asks Drake to reassure Dalton James that she will not pursue any claim against the company. To avoid media attention, Amber joins Drake and Amelia for drinks in Brooklyn. There, Amber opens up about infertility, the emotional toll it took, and her desire not to let it define her life. She reveals she plans to leave the Manhattan house and start over independently. Amelia offers her late mother's Brooklyn home as a rental, and after visiting it, Amber feels genuine hope. She decides to move there, determined to make choices for herself without Elijah's influence. In Chapter 19, Amber meets Elijah at their secret Greenwich Village hotel after informing him of her plan to move to Brooklyn. He agrees to try to support her decision, though he remains concerned for her safety. They resume their Mr. and Mrs. Smith roleplay, with Elijah taking control and clearly establishing boundaries, consent, and a safe word. The encounter is more intense than before, pushing Amber into unfamiliar territory that mixes fear, excitement, and trust. Despite moments of uncertainty, she chooses to continue, recognizing her own desire and agency within the dynamic. Afterward, they talk openly about Brooklyn. Amber explains that the neighborhood feels supportive and grounding, and reassures him she will take precautions and rely on Sanjay when needed. Elijah admits his worry comes from love, not control, and ultimately accepts her decision. They end the night emotionally close, acknowledging that while Amber feels physically safe, her deeper vulnerability lies in her unresolved feelings for her husband. In Chapter 20, Amber spends Thanksgiving volunteering at a community center, as she has done for years. Sanjay drops her off and worries about her safety, but Amber reassures him and joins the event. She helps welcome nervous newcomers and assists Ricky and Andrea Hernandez, longtime friends and veterans who run the charity. Amber works in the kitchen preparing food, and later helps serve a Thanksgiving meal to more than 200 people, including individuals and families with nowhere else to go. While volunteering, she appreciates the sense of normalcy and separation from her divorce, Elijah, and the James family. She listens to people's stories, offers kindness and humor, and reflects on how hopeful many attendees remain despite hardship. The experience reminds her of her privilege and reinforces her growing desire to build a meaningful, independent life centered on purpose, service, and making a positive difference for others rather than returning to her old, empty routines. In Chapter 21, Elijah spends Thanksgiving with his family but feels unsettled and misses Amber. A cruel joke from Nathan and Mason about avoiding Amber at holidays enrages him, forcing him to confront how disrespected she has felt within his family. He leaves abruptly and contacts Amber asking to see her. When she shares her location, Elijah realizes she has been volunteering at a soup kitchen, something she has done every Thanksgiving for 10 years without his knowledge. After picking her up, a tense conversation reveals Amber's long-held belief that Elijah consistently prioritized his brothers over her. She gives specific examples where he chose family obligations over her important moments. Elijah finally understands how deeply this hurt her and apologizes for making her feel second best. They agree not to dwell further on the past and choose to spend the evening together. They go to the Greenwich Village Hotel, reconnect emotionally and physically, and Amber agrees to stay the night, leaving Elijah feeling more grateful and fulfilled than he has in years. In Chapter 22, Elijah spends time with his nephew Luke before leaving a family gathering to meet Amber. His family teases him about dating, assuming he is moving on from Amber, and Elijah firmly shuts down disrespectful comments about her, revealing lingering loyalty and unresolved feelings. He reflects on Amber's move to Brooklyn, acknowledging that his objections stemmed from fear of losing influence over her rather than genuine concern. Elijah has moved back into the townhouse, finding it painfully empty, while Maddox stays with him occasionally, strengthening their bond. Elijah meets Amber in New Jersey for a discreet public dinner, embracing their secret arrangement as Mr. and Mrs. Smith. He notices Amber's confidence, happiness, and transformation since reclaiming her independence. Over dinner, they share laughter, easy conversation, and updates about her new life, including her upcoming community center interview. Despite jealousy and uncertainty, Elijah admires her growth, and they enjoy a rare sense of peace and connection together. In Chapter 23, Elijah brings Amber to a rented dance studio as a surprise, encouraging her to reconnect with her love of ballet. She is overwhelmed with joy and spends time dancing freely, reminding Elijah of the woman she was before sacrificing her dreams for their marriage. Elijah joins her, awkwardly at first, and they share an intimate moment performing a lift together, symbolizing trust and emotional closeness. Their connection deepens, leading to sex in the studio, during which they openly confess their love for each other. Immediately afterward, the emotional weight of those words creates distance, and Amber withdraws, calling Sanjay to take her home. Elijah gives her a pair of ballet shoes as a final gift, reinforcing his support for her rediscovered passion. Alone afterward, Elijah reflects on the emptiness of their townhouse and realizes he does not want a divorce. Determined to rebuild their marriage, he messages Amber asking to see her again. In Chapter 24, Amber reflects on the emotional intensity of her recent night with Elijah and struggles to balance her renewed feelings for him with her commitment to independence and self-growth in Brooklyn. She prepares to meet Martha for lunch, but is lured instead to Freddie Kemp's office under false pretenses. Freddie reveals he manipulated the meeting to pressure Amber into hiring him for her divorce, and becomes increasingly aggressive and threatening. He sexually assaults her by restraining her and forcing physical contact. Amber fights back, slaps him, escapes the office, and flees the floor in shock. Immediately afterwards, she encounters Nathan, who cruelly tells her Elijah has moved on and is happier without her. Shaken and distressed, Amber retreats to the bathroom to compose herself and clean up. Feeling unsafe and overwhelmed, she contacts Elijah on the burner phone and asks to see him earlier. His quick, reassuring response confirms she needs him for comfort and safety. In Chapter 25, Elijah is elated when Amber agrees to meet him early and exchanges affectionate messages, giving him hope that they can rebuild their marriage. His optimism is shattered when Nathan confronts him at work, claiming Amber has secretly met with ruthless divorce attorney Freddie Kemp. Nathan insists Amber is protecting her own interests and could destroy Elijah financially, especially since there is no prenup and they share a lawyer. Elijah initially resists believing this, but is shaken by the timing and Nathan's certainty. To confirm the truth, Elijah calls Freddie, who smugly confirms Amber visited his office earlier that day, though he hides behind client confidentiality. Convinced Amber has deceived him and manipulated their renewed intimacy to gain leverage, Elijah feels utterly betrayed. Believing their reconciliation was a lie, he spirals into heartbreak and anger. In a decisive, symbolic act, Elijah destroys the burner phone, ending the secret affair and declaring Mr. and Mrs. Smith finished. In Chapter 26, Amber waits alone at the Greenwich restaurant for Elijah, increasingly anxious as he fails to arrive or respond to calls or messages. She reflects on the sexual assault by Freddie Kemp earlier that day and realizes she needs to name it for what it was. The experience reopens past trauma from an assault when she was 18, deepening her shame and self-blame despite knowing it was not her fault. Amber clings to the expectation that Elijah will come and provide comfort, but an hour passes with no contact. When she finally asks the manager, she learns Elijah canceled their exclusive reservation and ended it effective immediately. The realization confirms that Elijah is not coming and has chosen to cut off their secret relationship without explanation. Devastated and hurt, Amber accepts that their reconciliation is over. Refusing to numb herself with alcohol, she leaves determined to return to Brooklyn and focus on learning how to feel safe and independent on her own. In Chapter 27, Elijah ignores Amber's calls and convinces himself she has been manipulating him after Nathan claims she hired Freddie Kemp to represent her in the divorce. Consumed by anger, Elijah prepares for legal war, destroys his burner phone, and later decides he needs to confront Amber directly. He goes to her Brooklyn home late at night and forces an encounter. Amber appears physically and emotionally unwell, nearly collapsing, and Elijah realizes her distress is real. He helps her eat and drink, observing signs that her new life and volunteer work are genuine, which unsettles his certainty. Elijah confronts her about Freddie Kemp, accusing her of plotting against him. Amber is stunned by the accusation and realizes Elijah believed Nathan and Freddie without asking her. She expresses deep hurt that Elijah trusted them over her and believes she used sex and reconciliation as manipulation. When Elijah presses further, Amber finally reveals the truth. She went to Freddie's office because he assaulted her earlier that day. In Chapter 28, Amber explains to Elijah that Freddie Kemp sexually assaulted her after luring her to his office under the pretense of representing her in the divorce. She recounts how he became aggressive when she refused him, pinned her wrists, forced sexual contact, and terrified her until she managed to escape. Elijah realizes she tried to tell him immediately and asked to see him early because she needed comfort and safety, but he ignored her messages and destroyed his burner phone. He understands Freddie manipulated the situation to make it appear Amber had hired him and that Elijah believed Nathan and Freddie without giving Amber a chance to explain. Elijah apologizes deeply and admits he planned to ask her to reconcile. Amber admits she wanted that too, but says she can no longer trust him because he consistently chooses his family over her and left her when she needed him most. She tells him she refuses to remain second to his loyalties. Elijah accepts her pain and asks to stay with her for the night to support her, and Amber quietly agrees. In Chapter 29, Amber wakes up in Elijah's arms and briefly feels safe before the previous day's events resurface. Elijah apologizes again for not trusting her and asks for another chance to rebuild their marriage. Amber admits she still loves him, but says she cannot commit and needs time and space, explaining that his repeated choice to believe his family over her has broken her trust. Despite this, they have sex, which Amber frames as reclaiming her body and agency after Freddie's assault, not as a promise of reconciliation. The encounter is consensual and emotionally charged, but Amber remains clear that it cannot resolve their deeper issues. Afterward, Elijah agrees to give her space and supports her upcoming meeting at the community center. They discuss Freddie Kemp, and Amber decides not to involve the police for now, asking Elijah to handle the situation discreetly without harming Martha or her children. Elijah agrees, and Amber leaves determined to focus on her own path forward. In Chapter 30, Elijah leaves Amber after ensuring she has support and heads to confront Nathan. He admits that Nathan's assumption was wrong. Amber was not hiring Freddie Kemp and has no plan to attack James Tech. Elijah explains that Amber was set up and that Drake remains her only attorney. Though Nathan insists Amber was in Freddie's office, Elijah demands he trust him and drop the matter. Elijah then asks Nathan to connect him with Shane Ryan, deliberately keeping his intentions vague and stressing plausible deniability. Nathan warns him the Ryans are dangerous, but agrees to help, giving Elijah Shane's number. Before Elijah leaves, Nathan apologizes for the damage caused if Amber was innocent. Elijah accepts the apology, but remains focused on what he can control. With his trust in Amber restored and his anger redirected, Elijah commits himself to retaliating against Freddie Kemp for what he did to her. In Chapter 31, Amber attends an informal interview at a Queens community center that turns into an impromptu dance session with the kids. She joins in despite initial discomfort, connects easily with the children, and demonstrates confidence and joy. Sissy, the director, decides to offer Amber a position based on instinct, commitment, and how naturally she engages with the kids, rather than formal qualifications. Amber explains she left her wealthy Manhattan life, is divorcing her husband, and wants to build a meaningful life centered on joy and purpose. Sissy accepts her explanation, but warns that the neighborhood has risks and that the center relies on a motorcycle club, Misfits MC, for informal protection from gangs. Amber acknowledges the reality and remains committed. She meets Rafael Reyes, the biker leader responsible for protecting the center. After learning what the role entails, Amber formally accepts the position, choosing to invest in this new life and community. In Chapter 32, Elijah receives information from Shane Ryan proving Freddie Kemp has a long history of sexually assaulting women, including clients and employees, and silencing them through threats and influence. The evidence confirms Amber was not his first victim. Consumed by rage but focused on protecting Amber, Elijah confronts Freddie in his office. He corners him, forces a confession through intimidation, and makes Freddie experience fear and powerlessness similar to what he inflicted on his victims. Elijah coerces Freddie into agreeing to contact every woman he abused, apologize, and pay each of them substantial financial compensation. Elijah warns Freddie never to harm another woman again, threatens lethal consequences if he speaks to police or retaliates, and ensures he understands he is being watched. Elijah leaves Freddie physically injured, terrified, and compliant. The confrontation resolves Elijah's plan to protect Amber and other women while keeping the matter out of public legal channels. In Chapter 33, Elijah struggles to keep his promise to give Amber space after she does not respond to his message. While attending a James family brunch, Drake tells Elijah that Amber sounded sick and distressed on the phone. Remembering her fear of vomiting, Elijah immediately leaves Mason's birthday celebration to check on her, choosing Amber over his family without hesitation. He arrives at her Brooklyn home with electrolyte packets and knocks despite his doubts. Amber answers the door looking pale and unwell, and her emotional reaction makes it clear how much his presence matters. When she becomes violently sick, Elijah stays with her, comforts her, and takes care of her without expecting anything in return. He reassures her that she is his top priority and that he will always show up when she needs him. Amber thanks him for choosing her, reinforcing the emotional shift in their relationship. In Chapter 34, Amber hosts her first girls' night in her new house, organized by Amelia, marking a milestone in living independently. Friends bring food, alcohol, and an oversized Christmas tree, breaking the ice with Melanie, Nathan's wife, and easing Amber's anxiety about their complicated connection. During the evening, Amber discusses her new role at LOJ, where she feels useful working with children, and reflects on rebuilding her life after leaving Elijah. She maintains distant contact with Elijah by text, but remains cautious about his emotional pull. After the party ends, Amber cleans up alone, noting how much her life has changed without wealth or staff, though she still misses Elijah. Later, while watching television, Elijah unexpectedly arrives dressed as Santa, claiming he came to help decorate the tree. They joke, drink, and decorate together, but the shared intimacy quickly rekindles their attraction. Despite knowing he is dangerous to her emotional recovery, Amber asks Elijah to stay, choosing desire over distance. In chapter 35, Amber and Elijah have sex beneath the Christmas tree, crossing a boundary they have never crossed before and deepening their physical intimacy. Amber initiates trying something new, making it clear the choice is hers, and Elijah is careful to confirm her consent. The experience is intense and consensual, and afterward, they exchange declarations of love. When Elijah suggests staying the night, Amber refuses, realizing that despite their connection, she does not trust him emotionally enough to rebuild their marriage. The refusal sparks an argument in which both acknowledge that their relationship cycles between sex and conflict without resolution. Amber admits she does not want this pattern anymore, even though she still loves him. Elijah, hurt and frustrated, accepts her decision and leaves. Alone after he goes, Amber tells herself ending the night this way is for the best, but she feels uncertain and emotionally unresolved. In chapter 36, Elijah and Amber meet in Drake's office to finalize divorce paperwork after weeks of no contact. Although both remain civil, the tension quickly escalates. Amber signs without hesitation, signaling her resolve, while Elijah struggles with her emotional distance. Drake reviews the settlement, granting Amber the Manhattan townhouse and a $50 million payment, but Amber shocks everyone by refusing the property and offering to walk away with nothing. The disagreement triggers a heated argument that exposes unresolved resentment about Elijah's family and their failed marriage. Drake intervenes, insisting they still love each other and forcing the issue that something from the past must be addressed. After Drake and Amelia leave, Amber reveals a long-hidden trauma. Years earlier, during Elijah's mother's illness, his mother told Amber she was broken, barren, and never should have married Elijah. Overwhelmed and minimizing the revelation, Amber leaves while Elijah is left stunned and questioning everything he thought he knew about their marriage. In chapter 37, Elijah seeks out Drake to understand the truth about what their mother said to Amber years earlier. Drake confirms he witnessed the confrontation shortly before their mother died, when she was heavily medicated and not herself. He heard her tell Amber she was barren, broken, and that Elijah would resent her, claiming the family felt the same. Drake explains he kept this secret because Amber made him promise not to tell Elijah, wanting to protect him while he was grieving and holding the family together. Drake also reveals his own guilt, as their mother accused him of lying and rejected him afterward, leaving him with deep shame. Elijah realizes Amber carried this trauma alone, which explains her withdrawal from him and the family and her refusal to pursue having children. Elijah forgives Drake, accepts responsibility for his marriage's collapse, and recognizes he failed to support Amber. Determined to make things right, Elijah decides he must find Amber and tell her the truth. In chapter 38, Amber goes to the LOJ Community Center despite not being scheduled to work, seeking distraction and emotional grounding after the divorce meeting with Elijah. For the first time, she feels certain that ending the marriage is the right decision, even though it breaks her heart. Near the center, Amber notices a group of young men surrounding Sean, one of her dance students, and realizes he is being assaulted. Instead of calling for help, she intervenes directly, ordering Sean to go inside and placing herself between him and the group. Sean escapes, but the leader turns his aggression on Amber. When he grabs her, she uses self-defense techniques she has learned and breaks his nose, forcing the group to back down. Eric and Raphael arrive moments later and disperse the remaining youths. Though shaken, Amber feels empowered. She checks on Sean, then asks Raphael for a training session to clear her head and refocus, choosing strength and action over emotional collapse. In chapter 39, Elijah goes to the LOJ Community Center to find Amber after signing the final divorce paperwork. While searching the building, he mistakenly walks into a self-defense training session and violently intervenes when he sees Amber pinned on the floor, believing she is in danger. Amber stops him and explains that Eric and Raphael are teaching her self-defense. Elijah realizes she is unharmed and learns she earlier protected one of her students and broke an attacker's nose. Shaken and embarrassed, Elijah asks to talk privately, and Amber agrees to meet him at a nearby pub. There, Elijah apologizes sincerely for how he reacted when she told him about his mother and admits he failed to protect and support her. He tells Amber he still loves her and wants a future together, but recognizes she needs time to focus on herself. Amber admits she still loves him, but cannot trust him yet. They agree to press pause on their relationship, give each other space, and revisit their feelings in the new year. In Chapter 40, Amber meets Martha for brunch and accepts her apology for arranging the meeting with Freddie. Martha explains that Freddie pressured her into doing it after learning about Amber and Elijah's divorce and admits she is afraid of him. She reveals that Freddie controls all their finances, forced her into a harsh prenup, and has threatened to leave her and their daughters with nothing if she tries to leave. Amber recognizes this as abuse and tells Martha that Freddie also behaved inappropriately toward her. Martha is shocked and admits she has been living in fear for years, wanting safety, independence, and stability for her children. Amber offers help, explaining that Elijah has leverage over Freddie and asking if Martha is willing to accept support. Martha agrees and describes wanting freedom and security rather than revenge. Amber plans to involve Elijah discreetly and advises Martha to keep quiet for now. As they part, Amber reflects on her unresolved feelings for Elijah and prepares to leave town to spend Christmas with Granny Lucille, hoping distance will bring clarity. In Chapter 41, Amber spends time in Charleston with Granny Lucille, finding distance from New York and Elijah restorative. The break eases her emotional strain, and although she and Elijah stay in contact, they keep their interactions respectful and non-sexual, allowing space for reflection. On New Year's Eve, Lucille hosts a lively party and later speaks candidly with Amber, pointing out that Amber still clearly loves Elijah and has grown stronger during their time apart. Lucille frames the separation as a wake-up call rather than an ending and encourages Amber to consider rebuilding trust. Amber admits she still does not fully trust Elijah, but acknowledges he feels like the missing piece in her life. Later, Amber exchanges messages with Elijah, who says he wishes he were with her and offers to come if she wants. Amber chooses not to test him, valuing honesty over pressure. As the new year arrives, Amber feels hopeful and decides she wants to rebuild their relationship. In Chapter 42, Elijah spends New Year's Eve with his family while exchanging messages with Amber, realizing she still loves him and wishes he were with her. During the countdown, Drake proposes to Amelia at midnight, and the family celebrates the engagement. Witnessing his brother's happiness clarifies Elijah's own priorities, and he decides to go to Charleston to see Amber. He secures a late-night flight and arrives at Granny Lucille's house in the early morning. Lucille directs him to Amber's room and warns him not to hurt her again. Elijah joins Amber in bed, and they reconnect emotionally and physically, reaffirming their love. Amber asks whether he told his family where he was going, and Elijah explains he stayed for Drake's proposal but intends to be open going forward. Amber admits she is willing to try again, though she is scared. Elijah reassures her that he believes in their relationship and wants to rebuild it together. In Chapter 43, Elijah returns to New York for work after visiting Amber, and Amber later leaves Charleston, encouraged by Granny Lucille and confident that rebuilding her marriage is the right choice. Back in Queens, Amber leads her first dance class of the new year at the community center and is pleased when Melanie attends with her baby, Luke. As they talk, Melanie briefly shares her history of miscarriages, hinting at the emotional weight of motherhood. During the class, Luke begins choking on a piece of rice cake. Acting instinctively, Amber performs back blows and dislodges the obstruction, allowing Luke to breathe again. Parents call emergency services, but Luke quickly recovers and is confirmed to be okay. Melanie is deeply grateful and emotional, recognizing that Amber saved her son's life. The incident strengthens Amber's sense of purpose and competence, and reinforces her growth and confidence as she moves forward into this new chapter of her life. In Chapter 44, Amber learns Luke is fine after medical checks and later receives a tense but sincere phone call from Nathan, who thanks her for saving his son. The exchange is awkward, but marks a small thaw between them. Amber worries about how Nathan will react when he learns she and Elijah are reconciling, especially amid Drake's engagement, Elijah's upcoming soul trip, and concerns about Dalton's health. After teaching classes and meeting with Sean, Amber feels restless and decides not to wait to see Elijah. She dresses up and goes to his Manhattan home to surprise him. Instead, Maddox answers the door, and Amber realizes the whole family is there, already arguing as Elijah prepares to tell them about the reconciliation. Mortified and unwilling to overhear criticism, Amber chooses to leave quietly. She asks Maddox not to tell Elijah she came, trusting Elijah to handle his family himself. Leaving by taxi, Amber feels proud of choosing restraint and trust over confrontation. In Chapter 45, Elijah tells his family that he and Amber are reconciling. Mason and Nathan object strongly, but Elijah firmly defends Amber and makes it clear that she is his priority and that they are a package deal. Dalton briefly appears unwell due to medication and low blood sugar, but recovers and the discussion resumes. Elijah states he will choose Amber even if it costs him relationships with his family. Drake supports him, and Mason and Nathan reluctantly back down. Afterward, Maddox reveals that Amber briefly came to the house, heard raised voices, and left before Elijah defended her. Realizing she may have misunderstood, Elijah rushes after her. They meet at the Moonlight Diner, where Elijah explains that he stood up for her and set boundaries with his family. Amber confirms she trusted him to handle it and left intentionally. Reassured, they leave together, united, and committed to rebuilding their relationship. In Chapter 46, Amber wakes up with Elijah after they reunite, feeling happy and emotionally close. Their morning highlights a renewed intimacy and a shared commitment to changing old patterns, with Elijah acknowledging he must reprioritize his life and put Amber first. Drake later calls to confirm that Elijah defended Amber to the family, reassuring her that Dalton is fine and that Mason and Nathan were firmly shut down. Drake invites Amber and Elijah to dinner with Amelia, Dalton, Maddox, and Luke, and Amber agrees, seeing it as a healthy step toward rebuilding relationships. Before arriving, Amber admits she feels nervous, and Elijah promises that she is his priority and that they can leave at any time. At the dinner, Maddox and Dalton warmly welcome Amber, reinforcing a sense of acceptance. Nathan unexpectedly arrives with Luke and apologizes for his past behavior and assumptions, including his failure to support Amber after her encounter with Freddie. Amber accepts his apology, marking a clear thaw in their relationship and signaling real progress within the family. In Chapter 47, Amber learns from Drake's email that her divorce from Elijah is officially final, leaving her shaken despite their renewed commitment. While Elijah is in Seoul finishing the Kim deal, Amber struggles with the emotional weight of no longer being his wife and worries about his silence. She focuses on her work at the LOJ Community Center, planning fundraising projects and teaching a dance class to children, using the work as a distraction. During the class, Elijah unexpectedly arrives, having immediately flown back to New York after learning the divorce was finalized. He explains that he chose Amber over work and promises to prioritize her above everything else. In front of the children, Elijah drops to one knee and proposes to her again, offering a new ring symbolizing a fresh start. Amber accepts, overwhelmed with joy and certainty. Surrounded by celebrating children, Amber and Elijah reunite fully, committed to rebuilding their life together and moving forward as partners once more. Epilogue: Amber and Elijah are newly remarried and on their honeymoon on the Spanish coast near Valencia, a place tied to Elijah's childhood. Amber feels at peace with the past, including Elijah's family, and confident in their shared future. They remarried quickly in a small, private ceremony at the James family home, attended by close family, Granny Lucille, and friends. Nathan and Mason behave respectfully, establishing a truce for Elijah's sake. Martha is safely divorced from Freddie, aided by Elijah's intervention, and freed from his control. After the wedding, Amber and Elijah return to their Brooklyn home, choosing it over the Manhattan house as a symbol of their new beginning. On their honeymoon, they reflect on how far they've come and reaffirm their commitment to each other. Amber recognizes that home is not a place but being with Elijah, and they look forward to a future built together, having learned from their past mistakes. Epilogue. 2. Set the following December, Elijah and Amber attend a Christmas performance at a prestigious Manhattan dance school to watch Sean, who began attending on a full scholarship in September. Amber's foundation funded his tuition and support, and Sean's success confirms how profoundly she has changed his future. Elijah reflects with pride on how Amber used her settlement and fundraising skills to create the Intrepid Young Voices Foundation, which now supports multiple talented young people across New York with education, training, and transportation. After the performance, Elijah and Amber celebrate Sean's achievement together, reaffirming their closeness and shared purpose. They briefly discuss the subject of children, and acknowledge that they are both content with the life they have built, actively involved as aunt and uncle within the expanding James family. They agree that honesty and communication have strengthened their marriage and that their relationship is complete and fulfilling as it is.